So in this video, we took our trip to Seattle, Washington. And I guess what was our first impressions of that?
I would say my first impression is we got incredibly lucky with the weather. It's kind of like our Iceland trip where the weather is the best 5 days of weather they had
Yeah.
all year.
It didn't rain, I don't think at all, the entire time we were there. The entire time we were in the state of Washington. The city is very intermingled with the sea and offshore and the water as much as it is the land, which was really cool to see. And the fish market is a big part of that. Lots of coffee shops around Seattle as well, which makes sense with the shorter days that they have being so far north and then the amount of cloud cover that they get. So that kind of gets you going in the morning.
Well, not only coffee shops, but like little coffee, like basically drive-up trailers.
Yeah, drive-through coffee.
Yeah, so it's a different concept than we're used to in the South. But
just overall, like lots of big tall trees, very green, lush. All of the plants that grew there were huge. Yeah, we had a great time.
The neighborhoods north of Seattle were all built like in and around like the hilly sides and everything, so that was really cool to see. They did a good job of preserving nature when they built all the houses.
Please enjoy our trip to the city of Seattle, Washington.
So that's a construction barge. It's a big metal floating platform. It's got a small tugboat that pushes it around. Right now it's got a crane on it and some other equipment. You'll see like two big rods hanging off of it.
Yeah.
Those that actually drop down and they sink into the mud to hold it in place.
So it doesn't move.
Yeah. So see the little blue thing on the back, that's the actual tugboat. So they're like small little boats with super high horsepower.
So we're going to check out the gum wall. John just turned the corner.
It's horrible. Look at it, like, I don't want to touch anything.
Don't touch anything, you just can just look at it. Oh, it keeps going. Oh, it gets worse. Oh no. Look, it's like stuck to the poles and stuff. I'm sorry, what?
Okay, what I want to know is how does a tradition like this start? There's got to be a backstory. As you can see, my face tells the whole story. It's nightmare fuel. It is honestly one of the worst things Julia has ever taken me to. I can't
Hey, you stumbled on it. I didn't take you there. You just wandered around a corner and all of a sudden there was gum stuck to a wall.
The history of the gum wall is so simple too. It was an old comedy theater, and when people didn't have enough money to pay for a show, they would stick pennies to the wall to help others, like get the loose change to go in. And it just became like a thing people did, and they took all the pennies off the wall, but they left the gum, and then it just became somehow, from people going to this comedy club, a tradition.
So next you'll see the Space Needle here.
Unfortunately, on our trip, we did not get to go up into the Space Needle, but we got to basically tour all the way around it through the locks.
The Space Needle was constructed for the 1962 World's Fair.
They designed the entire tower to handle up to 200-mile-an-hour winds, or like the worst Category 5 that would ever make landfall, hurricane-wise. And then they can also withstand a 9.1 earthquake. I wouldn't want to be in there for that, because that thing would be woogie-wogging.
Our guide was telling us that they had this 6.8 magnitude earthquake, which is rather large because the area is prone to earthquakes and volcanism. That the toilets ended up sloshing the water out of them because the Space Needle ended up rocking so hard. But it's supposed to rock to absorb the shock of the earthquake. So anything like 9.1, I think, is one of the largest earthquakes ever recorded, and one of those would be like in Chile. The chances of that are pretty slim, but not zero, which is kind of spooky to think about.
So here we come to somebody who grew up in South Louisiana's favorite hotel. The Edgewater Hotel, they say they used to catch fish out the window, and then they would reel it up into their window and then clean it and eat it for dinner.
It's also like kind of a rock and roll centerpiece of the hotel. So if you stay there, they give you complimentary sheet music and guitars as well, at least according to their website. We didn't actually stay there ourselves. We also have Led Zeppelin, Neil Young, the Beatles, the Foo Fighters, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam as people that stayed at this hotel. So the hotel was also built in the 1962 World's Fair to host a number of different people. And yeah, they had to kind of redo the entire inside of the hotel because it reeked of fish because people would like pull up the fish into their hotel room and then clean it and like either just not be very good about cleaning the room after or just like having fish bits absolutely everywhere. So it's that is no longer allowed at the hotel, as much as John would love that.
The Ballard locks are another thing that I wanted to see as an engineer. Is quite fascinating. The biggest thing, or my biggest question before we went through the locks for our tour guide was how much does the tide actually change? And I believe he said it changes up to 13 feet from low tide to high tide. That's a lot of water in peak season, especially if you're going to build literally a massive city on the water. One thing that they had to do is they had to design these locks to handle having, I guess, the inner lake 20 feet higher than the ocean. And they travel something like 100 boats through there a day. I mean, they open and close 100 times throughout the day. Some cool things we saw salmon running inside the locks. A lot of sea lions. They'll hitch a ride through the locks even though they're not supposed to get into the into the bay and catch salmon.
So they have salmon fish ladders set up as well where they can jump up to that to get up to their freshwater spawning points from there. So it's supposed to have minimal impact. All right, so what are we looking at here?
These are what I believe are called the lock gates, and what I'm zooming in on here is a giant hydraulic cylinder that they use to open and close. By the looks of that cylinder, they can get a lot of tonnage out of it. And what's beautiful is when the gates close, the water on the inside, as it fills up, holds the door shut, so you don't have to have a lot of mechanics to hold it closed.
Oh, that's super cool. So hydraulic means that there's water in those pistons, and because water's incompressible, it compresses it?
Hydraulic fluid, but yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
To break down the simple mechanics, a pump is used to pressurize fluid, and that fluid pushes against a piston, and then the rod is actually what you see in the video. You can get a whole lot of force out of a small pump pushing on a piston.
Bridge, the George Washington Memorial Bridge, or as literally everyone in Seattle calls it, the Aurora Bridge. I've actually had one of my coworkers' grandparents on, and he lived here for 60 years, and they had never heard George Washington Memorial. But it was built in 1934. It was the first major bridge to cross the Ship Canal, a major through highway rather than a major neighborhood road. My drive on my head. But Lake Union here is going to be our next stop. We'll see the waterway widens up a little bit.
There was a houseboat city that we went by. I can't remember much information about it, but I just thought it was cool that like everybody had a houseboat, and those houseboats were harder to get than just a regular house. Like people get on waiting lists and all sorts of stuff.
They can only have so many of them at a time, because otherwise you would have the whole thing would just be floating houseboats out on Union Lake.
Yeah, our tour guide said that at one point they had houseboats shore to shore on Union Lake that you could walk across those houseboats all the way across the lake.
I would say the most famous park in Seattle, if not the largest, Gasworks Park. So the industrial husks that you see there are the remains of an old coal gasification plant. So from the early 1900s onward to around the 30s, 40s, that's where we heated up coal under pressure, converted it into a flammable gas, and we used that for heating and lighting around the city. Later on, converted to natural gas, where we would do the same process, but with petroleum to produce flammable gas. That ended around 57 when we finally switched to national pipeline and gas moved onwards. So rather than completely demolish the old gasification plant, it was Myrtle Edwards, one of our city councilmen, who decided that we should rezone it into a park and build a park around the old industrial zone. And that's what we have there, opened up in '73.
If we'd been here in 1890, we would have been outside standing on a wooden sidewalk built like a boardwalk over the mud. They always knew that this level was going to wind up underground, so they didn't bother with any decorative features here. It's rather plain down here. But the first thing they did is they built these walls. That photo was taken after the streets were raised. They filled in between the streets by literally washing dirt off the hills. They used a mining technique called hydraulic sluicing. About the time they filled in between the walls, they ran out of money. So for a couple of years, they couldn't afford to pave the streets. We still had dirt streets, but now they're up there and the sidewalk's still down here. This is where the retail action was. You come into town on horseback, you tie up your horse to the side of the street, come down a staircase to this level. At that point, you could walk all the way around the block. If you needed something in the next block, you're climbing up, crossing over, and climbing down again into that section. Even then, they knew this was kind of dumb. Meanwhile, your horse is still up here. What's he gonna do 3 or 4 times the next hour?
Use the bathroom.
Yeah, well, use the bathroom is about the most diplomatic way you could have put that. You might want to watch out, especially since you're not wearing a hat. But the real danger, this guy already thought of it, you had to watch out for falling drunks. So a lot of people actually drank beer for breakfast. You couldn't always trust the water, but if it had been brewed, you knew it was safe.